Hi, my name is Sister Theodora. I'm from Mull Monastery, and today the intrepid Mother Ita and I have gone on quite the adventure. We're filming here today in the Nuns cave. It is a giant cave, and at about the same time as St. Columba, St. Brendan, and then following all of their successors, there were nuns that lived here as hermitesses. The location here is it's quite special. It's facing IONA, so that the nuns could always have fathers come to visit them from IONA to give them the holy mysteries and confession and spiritual advice. Now, the day that we're filming this is August 7th, and it's a very special day to me because it's the feast of Saint Theodora of Sickla. Now, I've been to her cave. She was a hermitess in Romania, in Moldavia, and if you ever come with us on one of our pilgrimages, you'll get to venerate her cave there. And what makes her so special to me is that she's so good at teaching me that inner life of silence, that inner life of growing close to God. If you ever get a chance to pray her canon, all throughout it, there's these prayers like, Saint Theodora, teach us to love prayer, fasting, and vigil, because through tools like this, we are saved and brought closer to God. I'm going to read her life to you. And just one more thing. I felt it was important to come to this cave today because I can't go to Sickla today to venerate Saint Theodora. But I always want her on my side. I always want her interceding for me with Christ. So the little thing that I could do, the little bit more effort I could do to commemorate her, to have her remember me before God, was to go to the cave of the nuns on Mull. It was quite the adventure. I said that, but it was quite the adventure. Mother Ita and I had to drive for almost 2 hours. We were almost at Finneyfort, and then we drove down a narrow, winding road, and then we had to hike for almost 2 hours across a rocky beach and across streams. My feet got wet, but this is the effort that's so important to put in, because we need our faith to be real. We need the saints to be alive to us, and we need to be alive before Christ. So let me read you the life of Saint Theodora. Saint Theodora, the greatest of Romania's holy ascetics, was born in the village of Vanatori, Nuns, in the first half of the 17th century, and was the daughter of Stephen Joldea and his wife. She was married to a man of Ishmael, but had no children. Therefore, she and her husband decided to enter the monastic life. Her husband went to the skete of Poina Marului, where he was tonsured with the name Eleutherius. He was also ordained to the holy priesthood. Theodora also received the monastic tonsure in the skete of Poina Marului. In just a few years, she advanced in obedience, prayer, and asceticism, acquiring the grace of unceasing prayer of the heart. When her skete was destroyed by Turks, she fled to the Buzău mountains with her spiritual mother, Schema nun Paisia. They lived for several years in fasting, vigil, and prayer, enduring cold, hunger, and demonic temptations. When her spiritual mother fell asleep in the Lord, Saint Theodora was led by God to the mountains of Nuns. After venerating the wonder-working Nuns icon of the Mother of God, she was told to seek the advice of hieromonk Barsanufius of Siestria Skete. Seeing her desire for the monastic life and recognizing her great virtues, he gave her Holy Communion and assigned hieromonk Paul as her father confessor and spiritual guide. Father Barsanufius told Theodora to go and live alone in the wilderness for a year. If by the grace of God you are able to endure the difficulties and trials of the wilderness, then remain there until you die. If you cannot endure, however, then go to a woman's monastery and struggle there in humility for the salvation of your soul. Father Paul searched in vain for an abandoned hermitage where Saint Theodora might live. They eventually met an old hermit living beneath the cliffs of Sichla. This clairvoyant elder greeted them and said, "Mother Theodora, remain in my cell, for I am moving to another place." Father Paul left Theodora on Mount Sichla, blessing her before he returned to the skeet. Saint Theodora lived in that cell for 30 years. Strengthened with the power from on high, she vanquished all the attacks of the enemies through patience and humility. She never left the mountain and never saw another person except for Father Paul, who visited her from time to time to bring her the spotless mysteries of Christ and the supplies she needed to survive. Saint Theodora made such progress in asceticism that she was able to keep vigil all night long with her arms lifted up towards heaven. When the morning sun touched her face, she could eat some herbs and other vegetation to break her fast. She drank rainwater, which she collected from a channel cut into the cliff, which is still known as St. Theodora's Spring. When the Turks attacked the villages and monasteries around Nams, the woods became filled with villagers and monastics. Some nuns found St. Theodora's cell, and she called out to them, "Remain here in my cell, for I have another place of refuge." She then moved into a nearby cave, living there completely alone. An army of Turks discovered the cave and were about to kill the saint. Lifting up her hand, she cried out, "O Lord, deliver me from the hands of these murderers." The walls of the cave opened and she was able to escape into the woods. As Saint Theodora got older, she was forgotten, and there was no one to care for her. Placing all her hope in God, she continued her spiritual struggles, reaching great heights of perfection. When she prayed, her mind was raised up to heaven, and her body was lifted up off the ground. Like the great saints of earlier times, her face shone with a radiant light, and a flame came forth from her mouth when she prayed. In time, her clothes became rags, and when her food ran out, she was fed by birds like the prophet Elias. They brought her crusts of bread from Siastria. Seeing these birds come to the skeet and then fly away with the pieces of bread in their beaks, the abbot sent 2 monks to follow them. Night fell as they walked towards Sichla, and they lost their way in the woods. They decided to wait for daylight and began to pray. Suddenly they saw a bright light stretching up into the sky and went to investigate. As they approached, they saw a woman shining with light and levitating above the ground as she prayed. Saint Theodora said, "Brethren, do not be afraid, for I am a humble handmaiden of Christ. Throw me something to wear, for I am naked." Then she told them of her life and approaching death. She asked them to go to the skeet and ask for Father Anthony and Hierodeacon Lawrence to come and bring her communion. They asked her how they could find their way to the skeet at night, for they were lost. She said that they would be guided to the skeet by a light that would go before them. The next day at dawn, Father Anthony went to Sichla with the deacon and 2 other monks. When they found Saint Theodora, she was praying by a fir tree in front of her cave. She confessed to the priest, then received the holy mysteries of Christ, and gave her soul to God. The monks buried her in her cave with great reverence. News of her death spread quickly, and people came from all over to venerate her tomb. Her holy relics remained incorrupt, and many miracles took place before them. Some kissed the relics, others touched the reliquary, while others washed in her spring. All who entreated Saint Theodora's intercession received healing and consolation. Saint Theodora's former husband, hieromonk Eleutherius, heard that she had been living at Sichla and decided to go there. He found the cave shortly after her death and burial. Grieving for his beloved wife, Eleutherius did not return to his monastery, but made a small cell for himself below the cliffs of Sichla. He remained close to her cave, fasting and praying, and serving the divine liturgy. He lived there for about 10 years before his blessed repose. He was buried in the hermit cemetery, and the skeet of St. John the Baptist was built over his grave. St. Theodora's relics were taken to the Kiev cave Lavra in the 19th century. Through the prayers of St. Theodora, may we all be saved. That's it. God bless you. Blessed feast of St. Theodora, and blessed belated feast of the Holy Transfiguration of our Lord. See you next time. Bye.